How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and if I sound quiet or sluggish or even a little out of breath at times, I did contract Lyme's disease. I had too many limes. I had some lime juice with my cereal in the morning, then had some lime soup, and I ended it with some key lime pie, and that's how it goes. That part's a joke. The Lyme's disease, that's completely true. So, if you're new to the channel, this is not normally, and there's just a lot of B-roll with very minimal editing. It's not normally how my channel goes, but I did want to have this discussion with each of you today. It's something I've wanted to talk about for a while, and it's regarding expectations for Starfield, but also what I do think is sort of one of the bigger uphill battles Starfield is facing, both leading up to the launch and the final reception of the game. I've mentioned this briefly in some of my other videos, but what I find really fascinating about Starfield, contrasted against past Bethesda Game Studios games, is the size and the scale that Bethesda Game Studios is now managing to reach, but also the way that Starfield is appealing to audiences beyond what they have typically captured in the past. And this is leading to what I believe is an interesting mashup of different interests, different wants, desires, and different beliefs as to what would make Starfield a good game. Now, it is important to note that whatever decisions have been put in place for Starfield, those are cemented, they're locked in, finalized, and so nothing I or any other creator or even complaints in the comments say that it's not going to change anything. The decisions are made, just keep that in mind and keep the comments civil. But it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that Bethesda Game Studios has grown monumentally from a 100-person team that worked on Skyrim to now around 500 employees across 4 different Bethesda Game Studios: Maryland, Montreal, Austin, and Dallas. And still, that's massively small compared to other gaming companies. But it's allowed Bethesda to broaden its reach, its scale, its scope of the games, and this is because it's drawing in more and more players to their style of game. And while that's awesome and the attention is definitely deserved for the quality of products that Bethesda typically releases, Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, I know wasn't their most popular, but it was still a pretty good game, it creates this wider net as to what players want to see in a sequel, or in this case, with Starfield, a brand new IP. It's also one of those factors that people have contributed to the dumbing down of Bethesda games. That conversation hasn't come up too much lately, as Todd has specifically called out the increase in RPG elements of the game and going back to some of those old mechanics, but it was big around when Fallout 4 launched and when Fallout 76 launched. If you want to see my thoughts, I'll have a link to a video done by Gopher Vids, and he does probably a better job than I could of summarizing my own thoughts, so you can check that out if you're interested. So when a company like Bethesda Game Studios reaches the wide amount of players they have been able to, from the, quote, traditional fans that have played since Oblivion or Morrowind or even further back, to the fans of multiplayer that really do enjoy and still dive daily into Fallout 76, and now the introduction of a newer audience which are fans of space simulation titles, crowds looking at Starfield whose previous interests and backgrounds might be No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, and so on. It increases the volume of competing values among these audiences as it pertains to the right way that Starfield should be made and the features that it should probably have. And of course, these aren't mutually exclusive, right? It's not just the Space Sim fans versus the Bethesda fans. It's not how it works. There's overlap between that, but because you often just see the extremes, that's what I'm addressing here mostly in this video. As a result of these competing values, the battle that Starfield now has to face is aligning player expectations as to what Starfield is, what it is not, and for fans to understand that if they're looking for certain features, then that's what they only want in their game, Starfield might not be the title for them. Now, as far as aligning expectations, I thought the Starfield Direct, it did an incredible job. Of course, there's still some lingering questions. I made a video on some of them, but for the most part, I know what I'm getting myself into, and most people, if you watched it, you should be able to make an educated purchasing decision as to whether or not you want to try Starfield, unless you're waiting for reviews, which is a good thing to do. You could be the biggest Bethesda Game Studios fan in the world, and you look at Starfield and you go, the space sim elements that are there, the barren planets for realism's sake, it's not really what I'm into, it's not what I play a Bethesda Game Studios game for. I can speak solely for myself when I say I absolutely love the worlds that Bethesda creates, in particular Elder Scrolls. I have an inclination and a bias towards fantasy, that's just my preference, and so I very much appreciate the densely packed worlds that you see in the likes of Skyrim, where there's always an interesting vista, cool landscapes you're traversing across, and every single time you exit a dungeon, there's probably another one that you can see within line of sight, or a trail leading to one that you might want to go off. It piques your curiosity and follow. And so while I'm still excited for Starfield, I look at the empty planets still to this day. Even after the direct and everything we've seen, I still look at it with the barren planets and the few points of interest, and I go, okay, it's believable and realistic, but is this fun? Is this a fun way to travel through a Bethesda world? Now, just to be clear, the way that Starfield was designed was done with intention. That is the vision that Todd Howard and the team had, and I respect it, and I'm looking forward to experiencing and seeing if it could change my preconceived notion and my biases as to how I experience this type of game. I'm excited to open my mind to that. Yet, conversely, space sim games could be the ones that you like, and you look at Starfield and think, well, I can't have fleet management and control an entire fleet of ships, and there's no land to space, and I can't mine asteroids seemingly. Like, what is Bethesda possibly thinking? And then similarly, fans of Fallout 76 wondering why there's no multiplayer and co-op, and it goes on. In every case, there are preferences, biases, just like in my personal example, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it does come back to the notion of converging audiences with different tastes, different wishes, and beliefs as to what would make Starfield a good game. And I want to wrap up this part of the discussion with a beautiful slice of humble pie coming from a thread on Twitter. This was originally posted by Corey S.A., who is the director of player engagement at 1047 Games, and he said some fun stats to sleep on. Comp/creators, 2 to 3% of players. Casual/all others, 97 to 98% of players. Percent of players who give feedback on average game, 1%. Percent of players who comment on this feedback, 10 to 20. And percent of players who say nothing, 80 to 90. He continues, I shared that to say, understanding what players want takes much more than looking at one echo chamber of discussion. Even if a Twitter community or one Twitch channel may seem loud to you, in a world where a game has 30 million players, it's not. The hardest element of understanding feedback is knowing that a majority of your players are not speaking, nor do they care to. This is why in-game telemetry and quantifying data is most important. There's more to this thread, and I'll leave it linked in the video description below, but if you are watching this video or let alone commenting on it, then congrats, you're part of that minority 10 to 20%. And I bring this up to establish that, one, I'm part of this. I am fully serving myself and try to constantly remind myself of this fact because I don't want to get trapped in an echo chamber, which is sometimes easy to do, but also it's just to establish everyone has their own vision of what a game should or shouldn't have. Starfield in particular is designed to be an RPG that's set in space, and it has some space simulation elements. It is not the other way around, which is a different thing. That's being a space sim that has some light RPG elements. And that's not going to appeal to everyone, and it might not align with everybody's expectations. I do genuinely believe that Bethesda is doing some really darn cool things with Starfield and capturing those traditional Bethesda Game Studios elements while still being able to expand in exciting new directions with new features and mechanics that really highlight the potential of what they can do in the future. For a Bethesda game, the beauty comes in especially its modability, which can completely transform the game to meet your vision, assuming the proper mods do come out. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I see it all the time in my comments, people saying, well, I don't like this, or I wish that this was here, or some things are just flat out bad, and I sympathize. I understand that some people want different things. I do personally feel as though Bethesda is doing a very good job of combining the most important parts of that space simulation experience with the most important parts of the core Bethesda experience, which is really what this game is, just in a space setting, and they're blending that together to make Starfield, and I'm looking forward to that, and I can't wait to experience it. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.